Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Nearly 1 million people in the southern districts of the Spanish capital Madrid have been told to remain in lockdown starting this morning. This is after the COVID-19 infection rates soared to much higher levels than in the rest of the country. On Sunday, hundreds of residents in some poorer areas of the Spanish capital Madrid protested against what they call discrimination ahead of new lockdown measures to stem a rise of the virus. They claim the lockdown targets poor people already affected by the coronavirus crisis.
The epidemic is doubling.
Meanwhile, the UK's chief scientific advisor has warned the country could see 50,000 new coronavirus cases per day by mid-October without further restrictions. The briefing came as Prime Minister Boris Johnson considers whether to introduce further measures. On Sunday, almost 4,000 daily cases and 18 deaths were reported in the UK. More than 100,000 people have marched through Minsk on the 6th straight weekend of protests against Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. Many walked in a vast column that stretched back several kilometres, decked out in red and white opposition colours and chanting "Go away." Several protesters were then dragged away from the crowd by security forces. Meanwhile, the main opposition leader, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, has urged the European Union to approve sanctions on officials accused of rigging the presidential election last month. The EU has yet to follow through on a threat to impose sanctions on Belarusian officials. A plaque declaring that Thailand belongs to its people, which was laid by pro-democracy protesters in Bangkok, has been removed less than 24 hours after it was installed. The plaque, which featured a hand giving the three-fingered salute that has been adopted by the protest movement, was dug into the ground on Sunday after a weekend rally by tens of thousands of people. Protesters have grown ever bolder during 2 months of demonstrations against Thailand's king and military-dominated establishment, breaking a long-standing taboo on criticising the monarchy. The main challenger to the Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara has called for protests to stop Ouattara seeking a third term, described as unconstitutional by his opponents. Next month's election is seen as the biggest test of stability in a decade for the West African nation. 3 days after former Prime Minister Guillaume Soro called for Ouattara to be stopped by any legal means, the main challenger, Henry Konan Bedi, reiterated the opposition view that it is unconstitutional for Ouattara to seek a third term. Mr. Ouattara says a change to the constitution means that his two-term limit has been reset. Officials have reported that deaths of hundreds of elephants in Botswana this year have been caused by toxins produced by cyanobacteria in the water. The deaths had baffled and alarmed conservationists and biologists from all over the world, with at least 330 elephants reportedly killed. Africa's overall elephant population is declining due to poaching, but Botswana, home to almost a third of the continent's elephants, had seen numbers grow to around 130,000. A three-storey building on the outskirts of Mumbai has collapsed in the early morning hours as residents slept inside, killing at least 10 people. Up to 25 people are believed to be trapped in the ruins. Local television showed video of rescuers sifting through rubble around the edges of the collapsed building. Rescue personnel are refraining from using heavy machinery through fears that the remainder of the building could collapse. A Finnish passenger cruise ship has run aground off the island of Åland in the Baltic Sea, with emergency services preparing to evacuate nearly 300 people on the vessel. The ship was heading towards Stockholm from Turku in Finland and ran aground outside the city of Mariehamn on the autonomous Finnish island of Åland. There are no personal injuries and no one's life is in danger, and the situation aboard is stable. That's according to the cruise company. And finally, a Turkish paraglider has taken literally the definition of airbed, flying a giant bed attached to a parachute. Hasan Kaval was launched from the top of a mountain in southern Turkey. All the props were there, bedside tables and a lamp and, of course, an alarm clock. Donning an eye mask, Mr. Kaval flew over the touristic town Alanya for approximately 15 minutes. When the alarm went off, it was time to wake up and bring the bed back down to the ground, which he did safely. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.